The car was speeding at researcher Gandalfini, the driver talking on the phone, completely oblivious to the senior SCP Foundation staff crossing the road in front of him. People on the side of the road screamed. One person yelled, "Look out!" with the resolute urgency of now. If researcher Gandalfini heard the words of anyone else, or the sounds of car tires screeching towards him, it didn't register on his calm, placid face. He took a few unhurried steps forward as what seemed like death itself closed in, and the car just missed him, skirting past him by about an inch, the breeze of it carrying up his lab coat. One person on the side of the road fainted from the sheer pressure of it all. But not researcher Gandalfini. He kept on walking to his local cafe for his morning espresso. Besides, he knew that something like that wouldn't hurt him. Further along, construction workers were repairing the roof on one of Florence's many historic buildings as Gandalfini passed. One of them happened to knock an old tile loose, which skidded down the slope of the roof and off the side, where it went hurtling down towards the researcher's large, bald head. "Maron, look out!" cried one of the construction workers, worrying that he'd be the one written up if the tile happened to smash open the skull of a random passerby. But Gandalfini didn't react. He kept walking at his standard pace with the perfect calm of a bomb disposal expert playing a game of Operation. The tile shattered right next to him, and it barely registered. He continued on his way, and before anyone could ask whether he was okay, he was already gone. That morning at the cafe, researcher Gandalfini was carefully sipping his espresso. His mind was turned to tomorrow, not today, almost as though he was walking through a dream. All sound was muted. The normally strong taste of the coffee barely registered inside his mouth. It wasn't so much life as a poor photocopy of life, where the printer had begun running out of ink. He got a call on his cell phone, his wife, in an extreme sense of excitement. "Giuseppe," she said, "I just took the test. It worked. It actually worked. I'm pregnant." Gandalfini just nodded and took another sip of his espresso. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, voice never really rising out of that neutral tone. Before the conversation could continue, a scruffy man entered the cafe and drew a pistol out of his jacket, pointing it in the cashier's face and demanding all the money in the register. Others in the cafe were plunged into a sudden state of pure terror, hearts pumping, hyperventilating. What had once been another part of their calming routine was now a matter of life and death. How many of them would be returning home safe tonight? This question did not seem to plague the mind of researcher Gandalfini, who instead just looked vaguely irritated that his phone conversation was being interrupted by all the frantic yelling. Some people had no idea of just how valuable time was. While the frantic robber kept pointing his gun at the cashier, he didn't notice that Gandalfini stood up and was approaching from behind, just walking over to him, making no attempt at stealth. Still, the man's approach was so calm that he didn't even register until he reached forward and simply plucked the gun from the robber's hands. The man turned to the researcher, astonished, only to be met by blank eyes as Gandalfini just placed the gun down on the table next to him. "Go home," Gandalfini said, not attempting to sound as threatening as he was about to. "Build yourself a better future, while you still can." The robber was so confused by all this that the only sensible option seemed to be turning and running, so that's exactly what he did. He didn't even get to steal anything, and was instead down the net price of his handgun. Another one of the cafe patrons was actually filming the whole thing on her phone, and the video would later go viral on Reddit with the title, "Middle-aged man shows no fear when stopping cafe robbery." When the situation had calmed down, the cafe's owner, an elderly Sardinian man, ran out and thanked researcher Gandalfini profusely. Not that it registered much of an emotional reaction. The owner handed him a small plastic card and told him that as long as he showed the card at the checkout, he could have free coffee here for the rest of his life. That almost made Gandalfini laugh. "I better have another one now then," he said, "just to get my money's worth." The rest of the day passed in the blink of an eye. He declined the opportunity to be interviewed about the incident on the news. It was actually against SCP Foundation policy for any of its researchers to accept any kind of news interview, even if the subject had nothing to do with the SCP Foundation. Why take the risk? Not that it really mattered to researcher Gandalfini anymore, anyway. When he got home, the volume was similarly turned down. His wife was eager to celebrate, both due to the news of the pregnancy and of Gandalfini's incredible amateur heroics. It was almost kind of funny. Gandalfini knew that his wife thought he was just a worker at a chemical plant on the edge of town. She had no idea that his little act at the coffee shop was nothing compared to the multiple times his work has helped save all of Italy, or even all of the world. That got him thinking about tomorrow again. What cover story would his employers use? A gas leak? A chemical explosion? It'd need to be something that'd give them a perfect excuse for a closed casket funeral, because… No, he couldn't think like that. What good would it do? Though some would see it as a curse, he chose to believe he'd been given a rare gift. He'd picked it, after all. And could you really afford to be that angry about something that you yourself chose in the first place? With that in mind, he decided to accept a glass of champagne and sipped it slowly, really savoring it. He listened to some of his favorite vinyls that night too, and took the time to read a few passages from his favorite books. In bed that night, he stared at his sleeping wife's face, trying to commit every contour and detail to memory. If it was possible for you to take anything with you to whatever comes next, he hoped that he'd be able to take this. The next day came, as it always does. Researcher Gandalfini knew exactly what this meant, but he knew as well that he had no choice but to accept it. He got up, got dressed, making sure that his uniform was perfectly clean and pressed for the day ahead. If you're going to go out, after all, you might as well go out in style. He gave his wife a kiss goodbye and drove to the facility as he always did. As expected, he was given the order that he and his new team were working with a new anomaly today, one that hadn't even been given a designation just yet. Not dissimilar in some ways to a large and extremely aggressive terrestrial jellyfish of sorts. All of these details were things that researcher Gandalfini was fully expecting by now, but he knew the rules. He and his team assembled in the testing room of Site Plutone to begin their initial analysis into the creature and its anomalous attributes. He watched his research team, people who he'd known and worked with, even mentored, for years at this point. They moved around the room and prepared to perform diagnostic tests like a well-oiled machine. They all had dreams, ambitions. It made researcher Gandalfini so sad to see it. He wished there was some other way, some manner by which he could save even a few of them, give them a chance to live a full life away from all this. But the story was already written. He'd just committed the cardinal sin of turning the page and peeking ahead, knowing that the words really were set in stone. Nothing to be done. He just sighed when the restraints around the creature started to break. A wave of panic spread throughout the room as some tried to buttress the defenses and others ran for the door. But the panic never hit researcher Gandalfini. As the deadly tendrils whipped through the room, catching his team and pumping them full of acidic venom, he just stood and closed his eyes. Even when the tendril wrapped around his own neck, he didn't even scream. When the footage of researcher Gandalfini and his team dying was analyzed during the standard debrief procedures, the lack of fear, surprise, and even resistance in the lead researcher was a point of fascination for senior staff. He was a brave man, sure. They had a viral video to prove it, but this was something else. It wasn't that it took him off guard, but he played it off masterfully. Researcher Gandalfini somehow knew exactly what was about to happen to him. They couldn't exactly ask him what happened here, given that his neck had been pumped full of venom by the jellyfish creature, so the Foundation settled for going through all of his personal correspondences and carefully tracking his movements over the site's security cameras. It was only by filtering back through over a week of footage that they were able to get an answer that made all the pieces fall into place. Despite every restriction warning against this very action, researcher Gandalfini snuck into the containment chamber of SCP-032-IT, the Haruspex. Enthusiasts of ancient Roman history may already think they know everything they need to know from the anomaly's name alone, but I can assure you that you don't know the half of it. In terms of its superficial qualities, SCP-032-IT is an extremely complex, sentient mechanical construction with a humanoid bronze outer casing, in the shape of a young man wearing period-typical ancient Roman clothes. This would be rather remarkable in and of itself, but what's truly unique about 032-IT is its ability to tell the future and not be reading your palm and laying out tarot cards. Or like the fact that I can predict you're going to subscribe to the DrBob YouTube channel if you haven't already, and in this prophetic vision I'm currently experiencing, you also happen to click the notification bell so you'd never miss another one of my videos. And if you think that little piece of self-promotion was intrusive, I can assure you that it's nothing compared to the level of intrusion that 032-IT commits every time it tells a person or animal's future. Long, spider-like metal appendages with surgical blades will protrude from the body of the anomaly and painfully enter yours, studying your organs in order to divine your future from them, before retracting back into 032-IT's metal casing. Needless to say, it's not a pleasant experience. Dr. Bellini, the lead researcher on the Haruspex case, has left an official note on the entity's file saying, any offer from SCP-032-IT's behalf to foresee future events is to be refused, with no exceptions. SCP-032-IT shows no sign of understanding how painful the procedure is, and, despite not having ill intent, it will stab you before you know it. The anomaly was actually first discovered by non-anomalous archivists and museum personnel after it was dredged up from spending possibly over 1,000 years underwater. Its outer shell was corroded, and it had some detrimental effects on its mind and personality. While it can slowly repair itself from damage, this can take an extremely long time as a result of the lingering effects of full saltwater submersion. This is why, rather than simply dismantling it and taking a look at the parts within, Dr. Bellini thought it would be more constructive to conduct a series of interviews and experiments instead. Perhaps these can give us some insight into why researcher Gandalfini simply allowed himself to perish on that dark day in the testing chamber. In the first of the interviews, Dr. Bellini asked the anomaly's name. It replied,
"My name is Spurina."
Dr. Bellini made a note of that and muttered, "Fine. However, I'll call you SCP-032-IT." After determining that Spurina identified itself as a Haruspex, a form of ancient soothsayer that told the future from the entrails of animals, Dr. Bellini asked whether it could tell his future. Spurina nodded.
"No doubt. Just ask me a questio."
"What do you need?"
"I need to probe your templum."
A word that means loosely the purview of a particular future teller's form of divination. For some, a crystal ball. For others, tea leaves. For a Haruspex, organs. Dr. Bellini nodded along. "In order to do this, you will need a sheep, I suppose?" That seemed to confuse and frustrate Spurina. Dr. Bellini's statement was not without cause. Historically speaking, Haruspeces did their work typically by analyzing the spilled guts of livestock animals for irregularities that would give them clues about the future. This was, however, evidently not the way that Spurina worked. Speaking slowly, as though to help the researcher process his words, he said,
"I need your cardo and your decumano. I need your insides, Doctor. It's those that I must probe."
Which is always somewhat of a disconcerting thing to hear, even from a close friend or family member, let alone a bronze golem from the ancient world. When Dr. Bellini tried to reassert his own understanding of the art of Haruspecium, Spurina corrected him.
"That procedure is erroneous. I explained it to the Etruscans many times, but they never listened. If I read the insides of a sheep, I will only be able to tell the future of that sheep. It is foolish to think that such an action can be linked to the fate of someone else. That is why their Haruspeci never guessed right."
After giving this explanation with the same detached neutrality that you might have when trying to explain Microsoft Excel to an older coworker, he asked Dr. Bellini whether he still had a question about his future. He did not, as you've probably guessed, and instead fled from the room with incredible haste. At this point, for all he knew, the Haruspex was a wolf in sheep's clothing, but as time passed and more aggressive traits never manifested, Dr. Bellini felt comfortable enough to return to the chamber again for the next round of questioning. When Dr. Bellini entered the chamber again, Spurina was unexpectedly forward.
"Ave, Doctor. Have you come back here to pose me a question?"
No. That will be for another time." Dr. Bellini cut in, trying to keep his cool.
"Please, I am able to tell you what lies ahead."
"Noted, but not for now," Bellini said, at least attempting to appear polite. Spurina persisted.
"'Tis the human heart who demands it. It is my purpose."
"Yeah, let's talk about your purpose."
"Do you have a questio?"
"No, SCP-032-IT, I do not have a questio." Fearing that he'd damage his rapport with the Haruspex, Dr. Bellini quickly redirected the conversation to the anomaly's own strange past. Spurina, it seemed, was likely thousands of years old, older than the Romans by quite a large margin. He'd once come from a different place entirely, beneath a different sky, where there were many more like him, before somehow being transported to the world of ancient Rome, where he'd attempted, in vain it seemed, to teach his art and trade to the humans around him. Intriguing, very intriguing. Dr. Bellini asked, "Who built you?" Spurina cocked his head and said indignantly,
"What kind of question is that? You, Doctor. Who is it that built you?"
Never mind that. Let's change the subject." Have you always had your appendages?
But of course, how could I possibly make my predictions otherwise? That is why I never could understand human haruspices. Indeed, visual assessment is a valid enough tool, but touching with one's hand is far more effective. Even better if the inspected insides are alive.
While Dr. Bellini took more notes, he noticed the Haruspex staring at him. After a moment's pause, it said,
"Do you have a questio, Doctor?"
Bellini firmly told the entity no, and that he would see it tomorrow before exiting the room. Only the dictaphone caught the entity sadly saying,
"But it is my purpose,"
as he left. Experiments naturally followed. 2 different members of D-Class personnel were tested, a process that the 2 of them found uncomfortable, to say the least. However, when asked to predict the exact dates and circumstances of both the D-Class's deaths, Spurna was correct in both instances, even when the SCP Foundation actively tried to make those predictions untrue. Like the tragedy of Oedipus, even the roads taken to avoid destiny only ever led to destiny being fulfilled. The flawlessness of the predictions led to Dr. Bellini attempting to perform one more interview. You probably won't be surprised to hear, Spurna yet again tried to pressure the researcher into accepting a look into his future. Once again, Dr. Bellini had no choice but to refuse. Dr. Bellini asked, "Why are you so obsessed with your predictions, SCP-032-IT?" The Haruspex answered,
"Because that is my goal. Also, all the time I spent at sea made me impatient. I could not wait to serve my purpose again, but I could not move. My last owner, Brutus, put me on a ship, but it sank shortly after sailing from the port of Puteoli. I believe he wanted to send me to Hiberia, although I am not sure of that. I could not break free of the relic, so I had to stay there. I remained underwater for so long that I can no longer repair my outer self the way I wish to. From under the wreckage of the ship, I could see the alternating of light and dark, and thus I counted the dias. Can you imagine what it is like to be eroded by salt water, little by little, watching as your body decays for millennia?"
Admittedly, he could not, so instead he asked, "Tell me about your predictions, SCP-032-IT. Has it ever happened that an event was avoided because of your very own foretelling?" He answered, "No." The truth was, once the Haruspex made a prediction, that prediction was fate itself. Utterly unalterable, completely inevitable, with no chance whatsoever by any means of altering the outcome. Which brings us to the answer. The very reason why SCP-032-IT, despite it all, is so terrifying, and how speaking to it led to the death of researcher Gandalfini. Dr. Bellini left one more note on the file, simply reading, "Today's visit to SCP-032-IT disturbs me. It is not SCP-032-IT's fault at all. On the contrary, it is very gentle and completely harmless if handled correctly. But its mere existence is proof that we have no choice in doing what we do. Proof that free will is nothing but a grand and subtle illusion. Proof that no one is truly free." Now check out SCP-4975, Time's Up, Most Evil SCP Anomalies, or watch this instead.